Hello everyone, and welcome back to the 3T Path channel, and welcome back to our Uddhava-gita course. So now we're coming towards the end of this chapter on extreme renunciation. We're talking about the varnashrama system, and now we've been talking in the last few classes about the vanaprastha and now the sannyas. So these are people who are renouncing regular social life and practicing different forms of detachment from the world. Sometimes it's going to get a little extreme, but we can take teachings from these for our own lives, even though we're not actually vanaprasthas, we're not living in the forest, we're not sannyasis wandering the earth. But we can take some valuable instructions and apply some of these teachings to our lives. So let's check this out. And of course, if you want to watch the rest of the course, we have over 100 classes already in this course. All you have to do is become a member of this YouTube channel. And the instructions are here in the description of the video. So here we go. We are in the 11th Canto, 18th chapter, verse 29. Although most wise, the Paramahamsa is this extreme level of the sannyas, the one who's going beyond all other rules and regulations and just trying to renounce the world in full spiritual connection. So this is called the Paramahamsa. It's a funny term because Parama means supreme, Hamsa means swan. Yeah, the swan, the bird in the lake. So it's a supreme swan. It's like, why is it a swan? It's because there's this idea that the swan can actually separate. If you put milk in water, it can separate, when it drinks, it can separate the nutritious milk from the water. And I always thought that was just something made up by these ancient texts, but then a biologist person, no, they actually can do that. So somehow they knew this in the past, and this actually has this ability to separate the nutrients mixed up like that. So it separates the nutrients, and thus the person who's in this world and is able to separate, viveka is a big term in the Yoga Sutras, viveka, distinction, knowing how to separate spirit from matter. So that's why they're called Paramahamsas. So, although most wise, the Paramahamsa should enjoy life like a child, oblivious to honor and dishonor. Although most expert, he should behave like a stunted, incompetent person. Although most learned, he should speak like an insane person. And although a scholar learned in Vedic regulations, he should behave in an unrestricted manner. Now, this is a very curious practice we see in the text. In the Bhagavad Purana, it comes up several times. Here Krishna is mentioning it in the form of an instruction. So what's the idea? It's also called Jada Yoga, which means like fool, crazy fool yoga, the yoga of the crazy fool. So the idea is, instead of outwardly demonstrating your internal control, and regulation, senses, and wisdom, and clarity of mind. Because if you do that, what happens if you do that? Why would it be instead of all this? Because if you are like, just brilliant and learned and well controlled and you look good, then people will worship you and honor you. And in that way, they will be engaging with you. And so the honor, the worship, all that will generate pride, will generate engagement, and then your consciousness is you have to interact with people. When you're a teacher, you have to interact with people, so your consciousness has to connect with other consciousnesses. And so that creates, creates an exchange, and you have to deal with the influence of these other levels of consciousness. You have to work with that. You have to deal with that. You see so many gurus falling because they get pride, and then they get confused, and then they get, they want sex, and they want money, and they want prestige, and so this is like, look, just forget all that. Just get out of here. Get out of this material world. So look, just get out of this material. Don't run any risk of getting involved. So look, this is what you're going to do. You're going to behave like a child. You're just going to be like a child. So outwardly behaving like a child. And then oblivious to honor and dishonor. So children don't care about honor and dishonor. They're just doing their thing. So this is like a child. It doesn't matter what people think of you. It doesn't matter. Nothing needs to be completely ignoring the topic of honor and dishonor. And you behave like a stunted, incompetent person. So this is like the fool. This is the jada yoga. So just like, and they would go around and in the most learned, he should speak like an insane person. So sometimes they would just speak like an insane person, or even pretend they were unable to speak, deaf and unable to speak. I don't like that deaf and dumb. It sounds very offensive. But anyway, so just deaf and unable to speak, mute. So deaf and mute. So they would just like not respond to people. People would talk to them and just like wouldn't respond at all. Just like, you know, like, in like here they say they're putting like this stunted, incompetent, insane person. So no interactions, so people can't interact with you because you're like, whoa, there's this no interaction. It's like, oh, this crazy. And you don't look nice, you know, like all dressed nice, you know, and behaving properly and good morning. No, he's just like this crazy person is maybe naked. Sometimes they would just go all naked. They'd just be completely naked, dirty. And it's just like, look, he's eating dirt. You know, he's talking to a dog. You know, he's just like, he's swinging from a tree. It's just like, you just forget this. This is like, this isn't a, because they had these traveling sages. We've seen the other sannyasis. They had like proper sannyasis walking around with the danda, with the water pot, who would go and beg for food. And so they had this institution of the mendicant, of the sage who was a mendicant. They had this, the sannyas is a mendicant, but he's a sage. He's a wise person. He's a holy person. So they would, you know, they would be received, they would be welcomed in the house, yes sir, and they would sit down and they, oh please sir, can you tell us about, you know, life and death and God? And they would like, yes, well, you know, Bhagavad-gita, Krishna says, you know, this and this, and oh, okay, well, thank you very much. And, you know, and they would teach people and leave and go on. So this is like, well, let's go beyond that stage. So now I don't even want to do that anymore. So I'm here in the world, but I'm not here in the world. I'm going to pretend I'm not in the world. I'm going to just completely ignore the rest of the world. So it's a very, very intense practice. It's quite amazing. Purport. A Paramahamsa sannyasi, fearing that his mind may be deviated by the tremendous prestige that people sometimes offer to a perfectly self-realized person, conceals his position as described in this verse. A self-realized person does not try to please the mass of people, nor does he desire social prestige, since the mission of his life is to remain detached from the material world and to always please the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Although neglecting ordinary rules and regulations, a Paramahamsa does not ever become sinful or immoral. So not to get confused, you know, so people are like, oh yeah, I'm just like a sinful, immoral, crazy hippie, but actually I'm a Paramahamsa. No, they would not engage it. Like again, they said, like a child, not like a sinful rascal. But rather neglects ritualistic aspects of religious customs, such as dressing in a particular way, performing certain ceremonies, or executing specific penances and austerities. The pure devotees of the Lord who have dedicated their lives to propagating the Lord's holy name must be very expertly presenting Krishna consciousness in a way pleasing to the mass of people so that they will accept it. Those who are preaching should try to make Lord Sri Krishna popular without trying to advance their personal prestige in the name of missionary progress. A Paramahamsa not engaged in distributing Krishna consciousness, however, should have no attachment whatsoever to public opinion. Okay, verse 30. A devotee should never engage in the fruitive rituals mentioned in the Karma Kanda section of the Vedas, nor should he become atheistic, acting or speaking in opposition to Vedic injunctions. Similarly, he should never speak like a mere logician or skeptic or take any side whatsoever in useless arguments. So, a couple of guidelines. So, of course, remember this, this is Vedanta. What I'm teaching here is Vedanta. Now, Vedanta is the anta, conclusion of the Vedas, like it's the highest level of the Vedas. But the base level of the Vedas we find in the Veda Samhitas, which describe the different injunctions and rituals for worshipping the nature gods, the demigods, especially Indra and Agni and Varuna, etc. So it's worshipping the nature gods, as we saw in all the ancient traditions of the world. I think of the Greek gods and what the Roman Empire, they had all those gods, and I think of the Nordic gods, Thor, Africa, like all over the world. The Aztecs, everybody was worshipping the nature gods. Surya, the Lord, the god of sun, moon, oceans, rivers, and especially rain and thunder, etc. So the Vedas are about that, and so the Vedas prescribe all these rituals, and they're called the Karma Kanda section because they're all, when you worship a demigod, it's all about what am I going to get from this? Right? It's something that sometimes we forget because what we call pagan culture has been pretty much annihilated from the world because of intense preaching by different religions. But what happened when worshiping the demigods was that you would do something because you would get something. It was an exchange. It's like, okay, I'm going to do this ritual for Indra because he's going to make it rain. There's no point doing anything for Indra if we're not going to get the rain. It wasn't like a loving thing, like, oh, I love you so much, Indra. Here's this nice ritual, and please just let me know how I can please you. No. It was like, okay, this is the ritual we have to do to make sure Indra isn't upset and is pleased with us and gives us the rain we need for our crops. It was very like, this for that. It was a business transaction. It's like a holy business transaction. And you worship this God, and may my children be healthy, and may my wife, and may we have children, be fertile. And the kings would like, okay, let's worship this so we can win in battle. It was just a very clear, like, look, if you're gonna get this, I'm worshiping you because I want you to help me in battle. It wasn't just like, I worship you because I love you, like we do with God, like we're teaching. So in Vedanta, it's like a different concept. We're worshiping the Supreme Lord, the transcendental Supreme Lord. We understand this is all illusion. And at the higher level, you don't want anything back. You just want to love God. You just want to love and serve God, and you're like, I'll chant your holy names if you give me this. Now we're not doing that anymore. We just want to love God, and we think of God all day long. Krishna says, always think of me, never forget me. So we're always focused on Krishna. Have your mind and intelligence fixed on me, Krishna says in Bhagavad-gita. So it's a completely different proposal. Krishna said, do that, and I'll make sure you get a job. And I'll make sure you have lots of money in your bank account or something, or you never get sick. No, it's like, that's not part of the deal. You getting sick or unemployed, that's just your karma. And that's just life. It's going to happen whether you're a devotee of God or not. You're going to get sick, you're going to get unemployed, you're going to have bad crops, you're going to lose the battle and war. It's just, that's just your karma. So, in this, so of course, the first thing the sannyas is like, well, he's not going to do karma kanda anymore, because that would be like, that would make no sense. This is a person who's renouncing all of life, all of material life. So obviously he's not going to do like a little karma kanda thing and ask for some material benefit from a demigod. So that's obvious. That's out of the window. But he also shouldn't become atheistic. And atheistic is also used in the Vedic sense of just saying anything against the Vedas. So if you just reject the Vedas, that's called atheistic. Even though it's not like specifically saying God doesn't exist, but just rejecting or speaking in opposition to Vedic injunctions. So he shouldn't go around preaching to people, oh no, forget this ritual. No, don't do this thing. Oh yeah, these texts are no good. No, you shouldn't do that, because people need those texts. People needed the regular Vedic worship of the demigods. That was okay. It's like, that's what you're doing now. That's okay. It wasn't rejected. It's a very different process from what happened in Europe, in the West, where you had pagan culture in the Roman Empire, and then the Christians came in and said, no, you have to reject that. It's only this way. You can't do that. That's really bad, and it has to be prohibited. So there was, of course, first they were persecuted, but later the Christians were, they destroyed the whole pagan culture. It's like, because you couldn't do that. But in the Vedas, what was happening for thousands of years, and happens today even, is that, okay, you want to worship Lord Indra for rain? Go ahead. Of course, if you want to study more and understand Krishna's instructions, then he'll say that you don't have to do that. That he'll take care of you. That you can ask from him, because everything comes from him. He gives Indra the power to give you rain. So why don't you just ask Krishna? Or better yet, don't even bother asking, just do your best, because it's like whatever. As Krishna says in the Bhagavad Purana to his father, who was organizing a big festival for Indra, he says, it rains in the ocean. Who asked for rain in the ocean? So we don't have to ask Indra to give us rain here. It rains everywhere. Krishna says that in the Bhagavad-gita, convincing his father, Nanda Maharaj, to do instead a Govardhan puja, worship Krishna in the form of Govardhan. But anyway, so in the Vedas, you have this, like, both things are going on simultaneously. It's like, okay, if people are materialistic, if they can't be bothered to philosophize and think about transcendence and go beyond just like, getting their stuff they want, then fine, worship the demigods. It's okay. And then when they're ready, then they can graduate to Vedanta. They can go from Veda to Vedanta, but never go below Veda. Don't give up Vedas. Don't give up the Vedas. Just like do the Vedas or do the Vedanta. But don't give up everything and become just a fool like people are today. Just no rules, and everybody just becomes degraded. And no, don't do that. Similarly, he should never speak like a mere logician or skeptic, or take any side whatsoever in useless arguments. This is really good. This is something that we're all challenged with, because especially these days, politics, oh my God, it's always politics and all these different ideas. So a lot of people get involved in these useless arguments. And so we can definitely take that. I definitely take that. I never get in. I don't let my students in our group, when we have our students, like, no politics here, because it's completely useless to discuss politics. You basically never change anybody else's mind, and everybody just gets angry and even more like focused on their own views. That's all you get from a discussion when you're trying to, useless arguments. People just get more entrenched in their own ideas, and everybody gets angry and annoyed. No benefit. So I tell my students, like, never do that. Never go get into these arguments. Just, whatever. Yeah, just get out. Go away. Because it's just agitation of the mind. Okay, purport. Although a Paramahamsa devotee conceals his exalted position, certain activities are forbidden even for one trying to conceal himself. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains that in the name of concealment, one should not become a ghost. The word pashanda Pasanda refers to atheistic philosophies opposing the Vedas, such as Buddhism, and Haituka refers to those who accept only that which can be demonstrated by mundane logic or experimentation. Since the whole purpose of the Vedas is to understand that which is beyond material experience, a skeptic's so-called logic is irrelevant to spiritual progress. Srila Jiva Goswami warns us in this regard that a devotee should not read atheistic literature, even with the purpose of refining arguments against atheism. Such literature should be entirely avoided. The above-mentioned prohibited activities are so detrimental to the advancement of Krishna consciousness that they should not be adopted even as a superficial show. Verse 31. A saintly person should never let others frighten or disturb him, and similarly should never frighten or disturb other people. This is a great injunction, very important. And we'll see how this can happen. He should tolerate the insults of others and should never himself belittle anyone. He should never create hostility with anyone for the sake of the material body, for he would thus be no better than an animal. So, beautiful instructions here. So first, you should never let others frighten or disturb you. Now, how is that possible? Well, that's possible because on this level of spiritual practice, your focus is no longer matter. Now think about it. If you're going to be scared or disturbed, that involves something affecting matter, not your consciousness, because your consciousness is beyond matter. Only you can disturb your own consciousness. Only if your consciousness is attached to matter can matter affect your consciousness, right? So as you advance in yoga and look at this level of advanced Paramahamsa level, you don't care for matter. You don't even care what people think of you. Remember, you're like walking around like a crazy person. You're not disturbed by matter anymore. So how is something in matter going to affect your consciousness? It won't. It can't, because you don't care. Oh, somebody's going to kill me. Doesn't matter. I'm not my body. If it comes to that, if somebody's going to kill me, fine, kill me. What do I care? It's on that level. That's how they would practice. Like, fine. And there's a beautiful story of Jada Bharata. So this is the story, beautiful story. Like, this is a classic Jada yoga story. So this is the great like we call India Bharata. The real name of India is Bharata, from King Bharata. So this is the great ancient Emperor Bharata, who was doing really well, and then he falls. He has his mind, he was renounced, he was in the forest, he was doing the Vanaprastha thing, but then he gets attached to a little deer, a little baby deer. He gets attached to it, and his consciousness gets dragged away. He dies thinking of the deer instead of thinking of his soul, and then he gets born as a deer because of that. But he gets born as a deer knowing that he used to be Emperor Bharata. So he's like, oh, I really screwed up. So he has spent his whole brief deer life oh man, I really screwed up. So then he takes birth as a human. And as a human, he can still remember his deer life and his Emperor Bharata life. So he's like, okay, that's it. I'm not messing around anymore. So he takes a vow from birth to be Jada. Even though he's very strong, he's very wise, and this nice Brahmana family, but he's like, I'm not going to do this. So he pretends he's deaf and mute and crazy and just like an animal. And they're just like, oh yeah, he's just like so this is our child. This is like so he pretends he's just like a crazy fool. He does a jada yoga thing from birth, very hardcore, because he could remember everything. And so he's just like doing hard. He's just like, people just, okay, hey, till this field. He's like, okay. And then some people come by. These people see him and they see like, oh yeah, this, he's just a crazy, he's a crazy fool. So they take him to offer him as a human sacrifice to Kali. And he's completely aware of what's going on, but he's like, okay. He's strong, he could do anything. He could easily get out of the situation. He could call for help. He's like, okay, they're gonna take me, they're gonna sacrifice me to Kali. It's gonna be a human sacrifice. And he doesn't do anything. He's like, whatever. It's like, this is like the whatever yoga, whatever. It's just like whatever. And they're taking him for a human sacrifice. And when they're about to kill him, Kali says, oh, you're not gonna offer this. This is like one of the greatest souls on the planet. This is an extremely advanced yogi. You're not gonna sacrifice. So she comes out of the deity and slaughters all the Kali devotees. She kills them and lets him go, because he would just let him kill him. So she has to like, no, I can't watch this. So, he walks away and they all get killed. Great story. So anyway, even if death is coming, he wasn't frightened. Don't be frightened by death. Whatever. So when you're fully spiritual, you're fully in this consciousness, no, I am an eternal soul. And you know what? I am out of here. I'm on my way out. Of course, if you have family, you can't do this yet. But that's why this is like, comes after it. Varnashrama system. You've done the family thing. You've done the work thing. Your kids are growing. Oh, now you get out. So now you start developing. Of course, you don't have to like wander in the streets naked or something. But this mentality of like, don't get frightened, don't get disturbed. Because if you do get frightened and disturbed, next time you get frightened or disturbed, pay attention. Notice how it's completely mundane. What's disturbing you, what's frightening you is mundane. It's something to do with your body or somebody else's body or some property or something you thought you were going to get and you didn't get. You might lose something you have and you're going to lose. It's all material, all ephemeral, all based on Maya. So the real position is not to be frightened. That's why Krishna says over and over again in the Bhagavad-gita, the yogi does not lament, does not fear. He says that over and over again. That's the state of consciousness, because you're focused on your spiritual connection. So don't let others frighten or disturb you. And of course, don't disturb or frighten other people. And people will insult you. Fine, let them insult you. These jada yogis, people would urinate on them, they would hit them, they would do everything like I spoke in the last class. What to speak of an insult? Insult me, what do I care? But never belittle anyone. So you're not going to insult anyone, you're not going to attack, you're never going to create harm or pain. Only goodness, you only just neutral or something good, never bad. And he should never create hostility with anyone. Of course, why would he create hostility? He's like, he doesn't care. He's not here anymore. It's like, whatever. Why would you create hostility with anyone? For he would thus be no better than an animal. So Krishna says. Very, very great, wonderful instructions. Purport. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has stated, Trinadapi sunichela tarodivasa hisnula amanina maladena kirtanya sadahari. One should chant the holy name of the Lord in a humble state of mind, thinking oneself lower than the straw in the street. One should be more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and ready to offer all respect to others. In such a state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. Very nice. A Vaishnava should never disturb any other living entity with his body, mind, or words. He should always be tolerant and never belittle others. Although a Vaishnava may act powerfully against the demons for Lord Krishna's sake, as did Arjuna, Hanuman, and many other great devotees, a Vaishnava becomes very meek and humble in regard to his own reputation. So that's it for now. I hope you've enjoyed that and have the rest of your day with lots of peace and lots of love.